Good morning. Welcome to Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Free Press Media Press Inc. and Alternative Parties Books Publisher sponsors this podcast. I'm Andrew Bouchard.
Welcome to Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, friends, we have another exciting pair of guests on our podcast today. They are running for office under the Socialist Party. So we're going to talk about the exciting campaign they have ahead of us today. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Let's get started by you both kindly giving us an introduction to yourself. First, by give us your names and tell our audience, they're in suspense, what party you represent.
My name is William Stodden, and like Stephanie, I represent the Socialist Party USA. This is the party of Eugene Debs, Norman Thomas, and several other luminaries throughout the 20th century of the United States. It was initially founded as an outgrowth of the labor movement. Eugene Debs, if you'll recall, was a labor organizer in the late 19th century and in the early 20th century. And then the Socialist Party was founded in 1901. It proceeded to run candidates and everything like that. You know, in 1920, for example, Eugene Debs was running campaign from the United States Federal Penitentiary in Atlanta, where he got over 1 million votes. And so that's the legacy that we've inherited in the Socialist Party USA. And like that, we stand for a lot of the same things that the Socialist Party has stood for a very long time.
Awesome. And you, Stephanie?
Yeah, my name's Stephanie Cholensky. My pronouns are she, her. I've been in the Socialist Party. I'm getting some. Is anyone else hearing that? Hello?
Go ahead. I had to mute Andrew. Go ahead. We had some background sound.
I can start over. I'm not sure what that was, but So my name is Stephanie Cholensky. My pronouns are she, her. I have been in the party, the Socialist Party USA, for over 20 years. I started out in the Young People's Socialist League, otherwise known as YPSL, and I did some organizing in Denver. I helped form a local there. I also have worked in Minnesota and formed locals here where I'm at now in Minneapolis twice. And I helped build the Northern Piedmont local in North Carolina. I've been involved in many campaigns, mostly for local office. I've volunteered on many presidential campaigns, but although this is my first time as a candidate, and I've also served on the National Committee of the Socialist Party USA, and I have served as co-chair. We might need to unmute.
Thank you too for that introduction. Let us talk about your campaign and your party. So kindly give us an overview of first what the party stands for in general, and also what your specific campaign platform is.
Okay. I might be able to give like a overview of the party, and Bill can go into a little more details about our campaign, if that sounds good.
Sure.
So the Socialist Party USA is one thing that distinguishes us is we are an independent socialist party. We run candidates independent of the two capitalist parties, namely Democrats and Republicans. We are also a multi-tendency party, and we are a socialist feminist party. So we practice intersectional socialist feminism, and we are also grassroots based rather than top down. Our party is local based. And all these are reasons the Socialist Party USA was the party I joined. My personal, political philosophy you might categorize as anarcho-communism or anarcho-socialism. Okay. I'm also a socialist feminist. But we have socialists of all stripes in our party as long as they agree to the statement of principles. You do not work with the Democrats. You can be a member of the Socialist Party USA.
Our our campaign specifically is running for a number of reasons. We were charged by our convention primarily to run a campaign aimed at drawing attention to socialism, to the Socialist Party, and our part in the socialist movement in the United States, as well as to sort of, I don't know if you'd say protest or trying to challenge the duopoly in this country, which is controlled by the Democratic and the Republican Party, who we argue are both capitalist parties, and there's really not a whole lot of difference between them. I always say the Democratic Party is like the heads of a penny, and the Republican Party is the tails of a penny, and there's about a penny's worth of difference between the two of them. But we don't support that duopoly. We're running as a sort of a challenge to that. We're not under any kind of delusion that we're actually going to, get, over 200 electoral college votes necessary to obtain the presidency, but that's not really what we're working on here. We're working to raise awareness about socialism. We're working with other socialist parties and other leftist parties in general in opposing the Democratic Party and what they're trying to do in this country, and to raise awareness and bring awareness about socialism to people, so that maybe we'll do pretty good this election, but maybe next time we'll do even better, and maybe next time we'll do even better and get into a mode where people are actually thinking about socialism as an alternative to capitalism in this country, rather than just something that's on the fringe that nobody really pays any attention to. So our goal, primarily is to educate people about socialism, to agitate and get people excited about socialism, and to organize people around socialism and socialist ideas, socialist policies, and socialist preferences, to get people to come out and start supporting socialism, rather than just basically claiming socialism and then going and voting for the Democrats.
Yeah,
and you're playing the long game.
I really think we have a great opportunity now with there's so many reasons this campaign is important. Obviously, we're dealing with an existential threat with climate change. We're also seeing threats to the basic institutions of, I don't want to say democracy, because democracy is a very strong word for what we have in the U.S. We have more of a oligarchy of the wealthy, but Americans are increasingly disillusioned with both parties. And, why shouldn't they be? What have they ever done to actually deliver on their promises to help working people? The Democrats and Republicans, they may differ on wedge issues, but when it comes down to it, they are pro-capitalist, pro-imperialist parties, and that's always where they're going to come down. And if they can do a little like have a little rainbow flag here, or stick up for someone's rights there, they might do that. It's usually just pandering, and it never ever leads to any systemic change. Systemic change has always come from grassroots organizing, and especially labor power as well. So, if we're not going to make a stand for a better world now, my question is just, when are we going to do it? When are we going to do? Is it when the oceans are poisoned and the forests are gone and the earth is practically unlivable, and we've driven so many species to extinction? I mean, we're running out of time here, and neither party offers any real solutions. They just get mired up in these culture wars, and that doesn't mean things like trans rights don't matter. They're vital. We don't trust the Democratic Party to actually stick up for them, however, because they never have, and it's always been a tool for them to basically pander to get votes.
Sure. So it sounds like you're playing the long game, and you don't want to cave into the concession makers that are ruling the day.
That's right. This is, socialism right now is, when people think of socialism in the United States, they think of someone like Bernie Sanders or AOC.
Yep.
And Bernie Sanders and AOC both vote with the Democratic Party on a regular basis. We can't really call them socialists, because those people, even, as they have won some electoral success, they've never ever advocated for nationalization of healthcare, for example, which would dramatically improve healthcare options for people, especially the poor and the working people in this country who have to pay through the nose for health insurance is really kind of generic and useless. If you talk about the Green New Deal or something like that, what you're really doing is talking about the federal government subsidizing private capital, basically continuing the socialization of profit and the privatization of risk in this country. We're certainly opposed to that. And one thing we've come up with as an idea, one of the ways we could solve a lot of these problems is just by nationalizing the Fortune 500, just going straight down the list, just
Wow.
and talk, and 500 companies right there who are responsible for, a tremendous percentage of the wealth that's generated in this country, nationalize those things and hand them over to the workers. Or if we decide that a hedge fund isn't really of any value to society, has no social value, just basically nationalize it, expropriate the property, and divide it up amongst the workers that used to work there. I think that a lot of the problems that are caused by this in this country are caused by these big industries that just are able to operate with complete impunity. And if we were to go right down the list and just take care of that, we could solve a lot of problems just by stopping people who are hurting the environment or promoting division in our society or keeping people poor. We could stop them from doing that, which would, in and of itself, lead to a dramatic increase in the quality of life for working people in this country.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And what we offer on the ballot is a choice. Neither party, neither the Democrats or Republican, offer that choice because they're at the end of the day, they're capitalists. They're not going to. They do not want a fundamental transformation of the economy like we do. They do not want this economy to be run for and by the working people. They want an oligarchy. They want the status quo. And no matter how much they talk about change or revolution, that's why people like Bernie Sanders, they twist the word socialism into meaning like a less evil version of capitalism. And what you end up with is that's what people think our options are. We either have, capitalism with absolutely no limits, or we have some limits on capitalism and maybe a welfare state that, where we have to fight tooth and nail just to get our basic needs met. We want an economy that actually serves humanity, and all of humanity, not just a few at the top. And that is something we could do. There's no good reason it shouldn't be that way, other than that's the status quo. And of course, it is very hard to get to that because the people at the top are not going to give up this power easily, obviously. And that's why we need to build a mass movement. That's the only way we can do this. That's the only way working people have ever gotten rights and a better life.
Okay. That gives a good overview of your perspective. So in 2023, what are the main issues that you're hoping to address that you think would make the biggest difference in moving the ball forward in your direction of socialism?
Well, we think it's very important to have socialized ownership of huge sectors of the economy, if not the entire economy. And what we mean by socialized ownership is we mean not just some, overarching, oppressive state apparatus, but we're actually talking about economic democracy, where if you take any company, let's take, for example, Amazon. They have hundreds, they have thousands of workers at Amazon. Let's take any given Amazon plant. Why shouldn't the workers there have a say in not only how that operation is run? Those are the people that have the most knowledge with how the operation is run because they're the people who are on the floor actually operating the machines. It's not the it's not the bosses in some office building in some faraway city that know how that warehouse works. It's the workers. So the workers should have a say in control and how that thing works. But not only that, but also workers should have the opportunity to reap the benefits of their labor and share in the profits of that company. So we're talking about socializing huge chunks of the economy. And I think that's one of the first and foremost proposals that we would promote on this campaign of socializing and nationalizing large portions of the economy. Like I said, it wouldn't be a top-down type of thing. It wouldn't be this oppressive state bureaucracy. It would be the workers themselves deciding how they want to run the company and how much they want to work for, what their benefits and their compensation should be, and what the benefits and the compensation of their managers should be. The workers outnumber the bosses. They should all have a vote. That's called economic democracy. Other things like promoting environmentalism and conservation in our society, where we could develop a sustainable use of our natural resources in this country in a way that don't deplete the natural resources, and in a way that doesn't pollute the atmosphere and the groundwater and the land, to utilize those resources. And things like we're going to be talking about like woke capitalism a little bit later on, but we also want to promote a radical form of equality where there aren't these arbitrary differences between individuals that determine their position and their relative access to power in the society, where everybody, as you can see, I'm a white man, a straight white man. Everyone should have the same rights as I do. It doesn't matter what their arbitrary status is, whether they're black, whether they're female, whether they're rich or poor. They should all have exactly the same rights and privileges in the society from a political and a social perspective as I do, who is widely considered to be on the top of the social hierarchy in this country. And so I would say that's another big thing that we can actually advance right now on the campaign trail here in 2023 and then later on in 2024.
Yes, and another aspect of our platform and what we offer is anti-imperialism. Both Bill and I, the party itself, is staunchly anti-war, staunchly anti-imperialism. We want to close all U.S. military facilities at home and abroad. We want an end to our weapons of mass destruction and nuclear arsenal. Obviously, we support the sovereignty of Palestine and oppose the apartheid state of Israel. Right now we live in a system not only of wealth inequality domestically, but massive wealth inequality worldwide. And that's one reason I don't support welfare state, because nations that have these capitalist welfare states are able to maintain them because they rely on that wealth inequality. They rely on exploiting primarily the global South for profit. So, and a lot of people ask, how do you pay for this? It's very easy to pay for this when you look at what we spend on our military, even on foreign military aid. A recent study showed that the U.S. funds 72% military funding. The U.S. sends military funding to 72% of the world's dictatorships. Now, tell me, how does a country that does something like that defend itself as a guardian of democracy? Of course, the socialists have an answer for that. We've never seen the United States as a guardian of democracy. It's always been a guardian of and fought for the working class. Or sorry, the owning classes. The working class fights in these imperialist wars while the owning classes profit. And we want to break up that war industry that has caused just horrendous amounts of suffering and inequality. So we're for economic democracy and anti-imperialism, anti-war, peace. These are some of the biggest threats to humanity. These are some of the biggest causes of suffering in the world. And unfortunately, the U.S. is very complicit in the cause of a lot of this misery. And we demand a system that we can be proud of, a democratic system that doesn't rely on exploitation and violence to exist.
That sounds good. That was a good overview of the platform you have. So one time a guest of ours mentioned a theory I never heard before. He said a main reason we have ballot access is in reaction to the Red Scare. They didn't want the leftist, the socialist, the communist type parties to be on the ballot. So have you ever heard of that? And also, in regards to this election, what are the ballot access issues you have to overcome to get onto the ballot?
I could answer a little bit of that. I hadn't heard it referred to as specifically with regard to the Red Scare, because our ballot access problems have been going on much longer than there's been really Red Scares in this country. It's always been a way for elites to ensure that they have the ability to narrow the choices down to two and only two legitimate or quote unquote legitimate options for voters to choose from. You can look at things like you can look at stuff where they in the past where they talk about single member districts. There's no law that says that there has to be single member districts. You can make a state with three congressional districts. You can make that in a large state if you want, and have three different congressional representatives selected however you want. That's not necessarily in the Constitution that it has to be single member districts. But our system, which is largely single member districts, has been decided that way because they want to make sure that the elections usually produce something like a majority, or if not a majority, at least a plurality, simply because that's the best way. That's the easiest way for elite parties to remain in power. One of your previous shows that I had listened to, that I had mentioned earlier, talked about changing the electoral college to have basically proportional representation at the state level. This might be a good idea, and this might actually help with ballot access, because then states wouldn't necessarily have such an incentive to limit the ballot access. But you could see going into a system like that parties would fight tooth and nail to protect the system as it is, to protect the primary and the caucus system as it exists, because that guarantees that they will be on the ballot, and third parties like the Socialist Party USA will stay completely off the ballot. And certainly parties that can mount a much more serious threat to the domination of the Democratic and Republican parties, like, for example, the Greens or the Libertarian Party on either side, will stay completely off the ballot. So there's not a lot of incentive. This is a ballot access question. There's not a lot of incentive for the people that hold all of the power to change the system in a way that would allow smaller parties to effectively compete in elections and potentially represent larger swaths of the population in a genuinely democratic government, or a genuinely democratic election, which is one of the reasons why I say in the United States we have something more along the lines of a formal democracy rather than a substantive democracy, a democracy that's that just looks like a democracy but isn't ever really a democracy and has none of the substantive characteristics of a democracy.
Yes, and ballot, like you mentioned, ballot access laws are used to prevent third parties from winning elections, even being able to participate in elections, which is incredibly undemocratic. Here in Minnesota, we were I don't want to say fortunate enough, because it was not fortunate; it was a lot of hard work. We were able to get 3 Socialist Party members elected to local office within the last couple of years, and the primary response seemed to be not to, look at our policies, see why our candidates are so successful despite all the hurdles that we have to overcome to even get on the ballot, much less win. The response was to make sure that it's even harder for third parties to get on the ballot or win elections, which shows that, the focus is not on democracy. The focus is on power. And that's why we have these crazy gerrymandered districts. And it's not just the Republicans. The Democrats do it too. They are definitely all about restricting third parties from getting on the ballot and winning elections. And of course, it's gotten worse now with Citizens United and other campaign finance laws. There's so much dark money being poured into these elections that there was one study that showed recently public opinion has very little effect on policy, but what the 1% wants, and especially what they fund, is much greater. It fits much greater to what is actually passed. So we want public financing for candidates for office, as for all candidates, not just the 2 parties. We want to limit how much personal financing people can do for their campaigns, because that obviously gives the wealthy an unfair advantage. And politicians, by and large, are the wealthy right now. I mean, just look at the U.S. House and Senate. It's almost all millionaires, even some billionaires, and that is not representative at all of the U.S. And even a billionaire with the best intentions, which I can't imagine what that would be like, but let's just say that was a thing. They are not going to be able to accurately and properly represent their constituents that are working class, because they just do not live in that same world. But ultimately, we understand that this campaign is a strategy to spread class consciousness, to build knowledge on what socialism is, to refute all the ridiculous things that Americans believe about socialism. But we do understand that real change for the working class does not come through the ballot box. The ballot box is one tool to get there, but it will never. We will never vote socialism into office. It's just those in power would never allow that. Whenever leftist groups have gained some traction, they are always met with violence. We suspect that if we were to actually threaten those in power with a different form of government, even if we want to institute this democratically, I do not suspect they would allow that to happen, which is why it's so important for us to build a mass movement, because we know that they will try to crush us, and ultimately they will fail. Capitalism will fall. It is an unsustainable system. The question is not whether we will continue to be capitalist, but what will come next, and if we will still be around to see what next.
So if you don't think socialism will come to the ballot box, how do you see it coming into power?
In a word, revolution. We can decide whether or not the revolution will be violent or not, but at the end of the day, the choice for violence always comes from the people with the power. The people who don't have the power are not the people that ever start violence. We can either have change. I always point to the idea that it's this fellow's a liberal. John F. Kennedy said, it's a very useful statement, even if I don't necessarily agree with anything else he believed, but that those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. And we can make a change. The change is going to need to be made. The change needs to be made right now. The change needs to be made yesterday. We can have that change through peaceful means, and the society can change into a way that's more sustainable for the rest of us, not just for the few of us who are currently benefiting from the system. Or they'll bring the violence to us when we start demanding things and everything like that. And at the end of the day, people can only get pushed around for so long. Eventually something's going to happen. Something's going to snap in this country, and then it's going to be a really radical thing that the status quo can no longer sustain itself. And like Stephanie said, the decision is not, the question is not whether or not change is going to happen. Change is going to happen. It's going to happen, guaranteed. The question is whether or not it will look like something that benefits society or something that looks more like fascism. And right now, with the left being as disorganized as it is, and continuing to believe that Joe Biden is a reasonable alternative to Donald Trump, which is just a ridiculous idea in my head. As long as the left continues to put their ducks in the row behind the Democrats, we're going to have fascism. That's going to be the result. So what we need to do is we need to go out and make whatever difference we can right now, using whatever methods we possibly can, elections being one of them. Running for president is one of the methods that we have. Unionization, having teach-ins, having sit-ins, having joining other adjacent movements and working with them to get the word about socialism out, doing whatever we possibly can to ensure that fascism is not the result of the inevitable change which is on its way. I think that's going to happen. Revolution is on its way, and we don't really if we continue to do what we're going to do, it's just going to hasten it along. So if you don't want that violent revolution, maybe you ought to support socialism and try to make that peaceful change where people start taking their own lives into their own hands, taking control of their own futures, and not putting up with this system anymore.
Yeah. And that is a big motivating factor for me, because I do not want violence. I know who is going to be hurt most by this violence. I mean, obviously, we do not expect to go one-on-one, toe-to-toe with the U.S. military and win. That's not how this works. The workers' power has always been in with whether they withhold their labor, in striking, in general strikes and direct action, and collective bargaining. So we can leverage that for change, but when we have, it's always been met with violence. And even though we might not want that, we should be prepared for that. And Bill is right that it's a sad time that we will see this change, and we do see the threat that instead of going the way towards peace and egalitarianism, we could see a more fascist revolution. And it's one reason the Democrats they just do not have any answers. They do not have. The right has been leaning into this far right populism as a way to. They don't offer any real answers to our problems, but they at least speak to a lot of people's anger and their worst tendencies. And the left is so fractured and so weak right now that because the Democrats in the end, centrists never oppose fascists, especially when they get power. They will always fall in line behind the fascists. Historically, that's been true. And Democrats, even now, even with the fascists, at least the farthest of the right, not holding complete power, they will always side with the right over. They would always rather have fascism than communism, because at the end of the day, they are capitalists. I mean, if I could say one thing about the Democratic Party, at the end of the day, they are capitalists. They're going to be capitalists. I wouldn't expect them to ever be anything else but capitalists. So if you do not want capitalism, do not support the Democratic Party. You're not going to bring them over. It's just not how it works. And you will use all your energies in towards trying to make a change into reforms that ultimately don't accomplish much of anything, unfortunately. So my personal plan for revolutionary change does not require converting 7 billion people to every aspect of my ideology. I realize that's not realistic. And that's one reason I'm part of a multi-tendency party, because if we're going to have a working class party, we need the working class is multi-tendency, so we need a multi-tendency party. We need to work together around our common goals, not a single strict ideology. I really grow tired of the cynicism that has taken root in the revolutionary left. I think we need to be realistic, but we can't just throw up our hands and give up. This is the fight of our lifetimes. This is the fight for humanity itself. And as long as the left wastes our time and effort tearing each other down and arguing about, whatever historical points, not that these points don't matter, but, if we don't work together, the right will destroy us. So, I really do want to build a working class movement of people of all sorts of anti-capitalist, socialist, Marxist, anarchist ideologies. And I get laughed at for this. And it's not because I don't understand the differences between these ideologies. I just think it's to the point that if we're not going to work together now, when are we going to do it? I mean, ultimately, we want the same thing. We might disagree on how to get there, but we want a classless, stateless society. We want a revolutionary system that is completely divorced from the capitalist system. And I'm willing to work with anyone who is willing to do that, as long as they're not like bigots or, some other counter-revolutionary aspect of their ideology. And there's so many people that want this right now, especially among young people. We have such an opportunity, and I think we can do it. I know we can do it. Whether we will, it's in our hands now. And I realize that's a big responsibility. It weighs on me, I'm sure, as it does Bill. But, we can do this. We can build this better society. People before us have unionized and drastically improved the conditions of working people. People before us have abolished oppressive systems, and we can do this. It's just we have to build the movement and do the work.
And I just want to add one thing to what Stephanie said real quick. If you seek reform through the Democratic Party or through the current capitalist system, all you're ever going to do is create systems that actually reinforce capitalism. That's how it works. Capitalism will twist every single thing to its own service. It's not some individual behind the screen pulling the strings. It's basically like putting the cart before the horse. If you create reforms within capitalism, capitalism is going to take those reforms and use it to serve itself. A good example of that is Social Security. Now, Social Security is the fifth rail of American politics, but even conservatives like Social Security because it helps people of a specific age. That was a universal social reform that was preferred by the Socialist Party that the Democratic Party brought into it to neutralize socialism, to neutralize any call for social reorganization of the society or social revolution in the 1930s. FDR specifically adopted that one because the capitalist system can accommodate that. And the capitalist system did accommodate that. So Social Security then is used to buy off workers and to get them tied to the capitalist system, because now if you lose your job, you don't get Social Security anymore. If you lose your job and you're unemployed, the amount of Social Security you're entitled to once you actually quote unquote hit retirement age, if that's even a realistic possibility anymore, is so low. So you actually got to work for a job for a specific number of years and make a specific amount of money to have any kind of hope for Social Security at the end of your working life. That's an example of how reforms are co-opted by capitalism. You talk about feminism and even civil rights movements. Those things are used by the capitalist parties now to get votes for the capitalist parties. They're not used to liberate anybody. They're saying, if you don't vote for the Democratic Party, you're going to lose your right to have an abortion. Well, I mean, the Democratic Party got elected in a lot of different ways, and the women still lost their right to have an abortion. That's an example of a reform that was brought about before capitalism was abolished. It's used basically to reinforce capitalism in this country and to neutralize any call for social change. And so you have to have social revolution. You have to have that. That's a necessary thing. And reforms can be part of that, but it can't exist apart from social revolution. You actually have to have a radical social reorganization of society for those reforms to stick and actually mean something in someone's life.
Since you were talking about, I'm sorry, you going to say something, Stephanie?
Oh, you could go ahead.
Since you're talking about how capitalism twists these reforms, one of the big things that's happening these days is what people call woke capitalism. And that gets to your idea of how things like transgender or civil rights things, all corporations are all over the place in favor of these progressive ideas. I worked for one of the Fortune 500 companies, and the CEO of all people said she supported Black Lives Matters. In the past, you typically didn't hear that type of thing, where the CEOs were more overtly conservative. They wouldn't dare criticize police. And I found that I unionized my corporation, and I found that was the one thing they would not tolerate is union. They would tolerate transgender, they tolerate different religions, different races, criticism of police, but not unionism. So kindly speak to how your party is approaching something like woke capitalism that is so slippery and prevalent these days.
Well, we're opposed to capitalism. So you got to remember the reason why a company could support something like Black Lives Matter or, transgender rights, or why Target, for example, could have a rainbow flag celebration where they, promote specific identity politics that are prevalent in our society, is because it doesn't actually threaten their economic security. They're actually looking to increasing the base of people who are willing to go and shop at Target. So, for example, if I'm a Target CEO, it doesn't cost me any money at all. Well, with the possible exception of the radical right who is opposed to wokeness, claiming that they're not going to shop at Target anymore. Like, really, I mean, that's not even realistic, because they're not completely on board with that on the radical right. Just because Target has a rainbow flag celebration or something like this, where they're highlighting what they call gay rights, they're basically just trying to get gay people who identify with the rainbow flag to come into the Target and spend their money. It doesn't cost them any money to do that. They actually are opening their store up to more populations. But it's possible. I mean, this is a crazy idea. It's possible that those gay couples that they're promoting, the rainbow flag to, and saying, look, now we're open to gays and everything, we're already shopping at Target. So it's not really making that much of a difference, and it certainly isn't making any difference in society. It isn't empowering anybody for Target to promote what I like the term woke capitalism. It doesn't it doesn't actually help anybody be empowered. It just lets everybody know that Target now has a rainbow flag on it, and they're going to continue to exploit their workers. They're going to continue to exploit their suppliers, the people that they buy clothes from, who are making cents on the dollar in sweatshops in foreign countries. They're going to continue to exploit those people. They're just going to exploit them now to also the gay community, or the trans community, or whatever you want to say. It doesn't cost the company anything to take a stand on social issues, and it really just increases their profitability, if anything. And so we oppose woke capitalism because we oppose capitalism. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't make anyone's life better. It certainly doesn't empower any of their workers to take a stand, which kind of explains why the CEO you're referring to is all about, what identity politics, all about transgender rights, LGBTQ positive, everything like that, but still against unions, because unions actually might threaten their bottom line.
Wow. Exactly. For them, it really is just pandering, and I've made pains to explain to people, because there are many legitimate criticisms of the kind of mainstream feminism, and those criticisms are not. The problem is not the feminism part; it's the liberal identity politics part. So we are obviously not liberals, and we are not for their version of identity politics. We are intersectional socialist feminism, where we see how capitalism, they divide workers against workers. They've done this for always. All oppressive regimes have. They have divided us with sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, ageism, nationalism, every variety of bigotry. We do not need another reason for working people to fight amongst each other. We need to fight for each other, and we all face different forms of oppression, but ultimately we're oppressed under the system of capitalism. And corporations will pander to this, but they will never support any systemic changes that threaten their bottom line. And it is ultimately in their best interest often to keep people fighting over these culture wars. That's why you've seen both sides of, I don't want to say both sides because they're kind of the same side, but the Republicans and Democrats really love this culture war thing because they could pretend like they are not serving the same masters. But when you get down to it, look at who's funding both parties. They may differ on these wedge issues, but ultimately, as long as the wealthy stay wealthy and the workers stay exploited, they are happy. And if putting a rainbow flag on, the orphan crushing machine makes a couple people happy and tricks them into thinking that, spending money is the way to liberation, or, supporting the corporation that supposedly mirrors your values, they don't, but supposedly does because they slap a sticker on something, that's not the way to change. And it's ultimately a distraction. It's Marx talked about how everything is commodified. Of course Black Lives Matter is going to be commodified, and then that is not a criticism of Black Lives Matter. That's just what happens under capitalism. They take everything and they make it meaningless and find a way to sell it. And it's just a horrible and heartless system, but there are alternatives, and that's what we should look to. And I hope people don't get too disillusioned by capitalism, to actually understand that these forms of oppression do exist, and that we desperately need to fight them and fight the ultimate economic system that allows them. Well, I don't want to say allows them to continue, because it's not. There would still be forms of bigotry without capitalism, but capitalism definitely enables them and works to perpetuate them.
Sure. So how are you reaching out to the voters, supporters in this election? What is your way to communicate with them and to connect with them?
Well, right now we're starting doing primarily online stuff. We don't have a lot of money. It costs a lot of money to be on TV and on the radio and in the press. But we do have beginnings of a press strategy with regard to, reaching out to people where they're at. I think that one of the biggest like the easiest things to create is memes, and memes is just another new form of propaganda, essentially, where you are able to communicate a really complex idea with a picture or some kind of cartoon or something like that. Memes are kind of where it's at right now. They're easily distributable, they're very easy to produce, and they actually pack a lot of meaning in a very, very small package. We can do that. We can do that for free with volunteer work. And we're also creating a donation site where we are trying to get out the message about getting ballot access. We've identified probably a dozen, maybe 15 states where it's going to be fairly easy, relatively speaking, to get onto the ballot. Utah being the first one of them, but we are also looking at, say, North Carolina. We're also looking at, possibly Georgia, maybe Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan, New Jersey, places like this where it's going to be, relatively speaking, low cost effort to get ballot access. They require maybe 3,000 or 4,000 signatures per state, which we are raising funds to try to get to. But I think that we're using that to hopefully generate some momentum and some interest in the campaign. At the very start, we're lucky in the sense that we have sort of a 6 or 8 month head start on the national parties, or the duopoly parties, in that they haven't picked their candidates yet. They won't do that formally until August of next year. So we have almost a 10-month head start on them to try to catch up a little bit in areas where we actually can, without expending a ton of money and without expending a ton of human resources. Meanwhile, we'll also continue to do interviews like this. We'll also reach out to party locals and local activists in relatively adjacent groups, student groups, civic groups, things like that, people who are working on nonpartisan issues or ballot access issues, to try to generate some momentum for the campaign as well. In reality, I mean, we're not delusional. Of course, we're not crazy. This is not going to be an easy slog to get votes in this country, but the idea, of course, is the votes don't really translate into the amount of interest that we generate. Hopefully we get people who are willing to join the party and work for the party on socialist issues after the campaign is over. Building websites and also building activist networks and connections with people that have experience in running campaigns, so that while we might not do incredible, jaw-dropping, the incredible as possible, we could do that. But while we might not, knock anyone's socks off with this campaign, hopefully we build a good, solid foundation for the next 4 years, so that when we hit the road again in 4 years and continue this fight, we'll have a much stronger national organization, we'll have a much stronger state and local organization, and we'll also have a very strong activist network who has a lot of experience running in state and local campaigns, so that when it comes time to run for president again, we're not rebuilding the infrastructure. We're utilizing the infrastructure that we've already left in place. We're taking people who have experience, who are able to run campaigns and run a much more effective campaign within 4 years than even that we're able to do right now with almost complete volunteers.
And one thing I want to, well, a few things I'd like to add. We are just getting started out. We've just recently filed, and we are self-funded. We don't get paid to do this, and no one working for us other than the one staff member gets paid. So and we're all working class people, so it is difficult. It shows how just even to run, we're already facing so many other hurdles that wealthy people who are part of the mainstream political establishment do not face, which it's to be expected. But one thing I think we can do is actually turn that system on its head, because to run as a socialist, I think we realize, like, even if we were to get elected, what would we do if we were elected? I mean, we are opposed to this capitalist imperialist system. Being the head of it would be, I don't know if you can actually dismantle it that way. The point is
a nightmare.
Yeah, Like I think Mimi said, if he were to be elected, the first thing he would have to do is fire himself, because what is he doing at the head of this exploitive machine? But so we want to expose the contradictions within the system. And just one example, like, of course we have to go and collect thousands and thousands of signatures, which is a lot of work, and it takes resources and volunteers that we could be using to actually campaign. But now I have an excuse to knock on people's doors and talk to them about socialism. And that's something I can't do normally. But when I'm a part of a campaign, or even when I'm a candidate, now I can. Now I could walk up to anyone and have an excuse to talk to them about socialism, and I will. And I hope we can build that into a movement that does lead to radical change. It won't. I really seriously doubt it's going to come from this campaign, but this is just one piece of the puzzle towards building a strong socialist movement in the U.S. And we have had it before. We can do it again. There's definitely a need for it. And I really believe that if we put the time and effort in, and we offer people the one thing that neither of the capitalist parties can offer, which is we have real solutions to the problems working class people are facing. We can answer these questions without avoiding them or scapegoating some minority to try to distract from the everyday life that working class people are facing. And we have many challenges. One of them is that Americans generally don't have a great understanding of socialism, but that's all the more reason, I really like to get out there and just get some people to listen to me. And I think if they hear what we're actually talking about, they're going to realize that when CNN and Fox News cover socialism, what they're talking about is not what we are. We've been drastically misrepresentative. We are not. Socialism is not, anything the government does, or taxes, or whatever they say. And I think we can build a movement out of the fact that both parties have failed to properly represent what working people need. And I really am so fortunate to have so many great volunteers to do it with. And if I strongly encourage anyone out there to look at our statement of principles and think about these issues. You might not agree with us on everything, but you very well may agree with us on the path that we're going. And to me, joining the Socialist Party and being part of so many campaigns, including this one, has been such a rewarding experience, because you're bombarded by just the news and the way things are, and the way things have gotten worse, and the way people are suffering every day on the news. And to me, just being able to get up and work on this campaign, or work towards building the Socialist Party, it really gives my life meaning, because I know that I'm doing something to at least help people and change the way things are. So if you're feeling disillusioned and hopeless, I strongly encourage you. You don't have to get involved in our campaign or even our party, but look around locally. Who needs help? Where can you be of help? There's so much you can do. Even if you don't have a great background in political economy, meet up with some people that really are trying to make a difference. And I guarantee you, it is you will be paid back all the effort you put in twicefold, because it really is rewarding work.
So how can our audience connect with your campaign? You were mentioning a website. How can they connect with you?
So the easiest way is to just go at SPUSA, that's Socialist Party USA, at SPUSA 2024. We're there everywhere. Socialist Party USA 2024.org is our website. And right now that points to our donation site, but we are within the next couple of weeks going to have our full website launched, which will have position statements from Stephanie and I, platform, other things, other links to other activists and other organizations that people can get involved with. And we'll also link back with the Socialist Party USA itself. SPUSA 2024 is where we're at everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, we're there. So once we get that website launched, you'll definitely be able to check out written versions of what we just told you here. And that's just the easiest way to do it. Just go at SPUSA 2024 on your chosen social media platform. I don't think we have TikTok yet. I'm a little bit old to know how to use that, but I imagine that's probably in our future as well. The SPUSA 2024 is where we're at.
All right. All right. Well, thank you too for coming on the podcast today and talking about your campaign and your philosophy and your party.
Oh, for sure. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's great to have this opportunity.
We wish you all the best in your campaign and also in your personal, professional life, everything you do.
Thank you very much.
Much.
Bye now.